I was at the Y and I saw this dad shaming his daughter for the way that she was playing basketball. And they were there, I guess, supposed to be working together to improve her skills so that she could play better and be more prepared for the upcoming basketball season. And my heart broke for this girl because the dad was just railing her. He did not let her catch her breath before another nasty, rude thing came spewing out of his mouth. And it got me thinking, what about her and the way that she was playing felt so triggering to him? And I think that this is a really important thing for us to consider when we've been shamed by someone, because ultimately, when we are shamed by someone, it's not really about us, it's really about them. It's about some issue that they have, and shaming us in some way makes them feel better, justified, validated. Meanwhile, it feels really shitty for us. But it's not meant to be about us. And I think that's the important thing to take a look at, because if we can recognize that the shame isn't really about us, it's about them, it allows us to be able to move through it a little bit easier. It allows us to detach in a healthy way from what was said so that we don't internalize it and have it seep into us and overtake us and what we think about ourselves and what we believe about ourselves. And so I just wanted to dissect this a little bit. So the girl was doing everything that dad said, or at least she was attempting to. And he just could not see the positive in anything that she had done. And he was yelling at her, "Why would you do that? You just threw the ball. You didn't set up for the shot." And at one point he said to her, I've been here with you for 35 minutes and you've not done anything that I've said. I am exhausted and I'm leaving. And so he left. He left her there alone to continue practicing on her own. And she just had, it was like the life force drained right out of her. She had no enthusiasm. She was just really going through the motions, and her shoulders were slumped, and she just looked defeated. She looked like she had been trampled on, chewed up, spit out, and then mashed into the ground. And so I wonder if the dad had any ability to reflect back on the situation after he had gotten home and maybe taken a nap or rested, and wondered what he could have done maybe differently that would have helped the situation. And so the first thing, if I were there helping dad work through this, I would ask him, does it mean something about you as a dad or you as a coach that you felt like your daughter wasn't listening to you? Does it mean something about you in a bad way? Does it mean that you're not a good father? Does it mean you're not a good coach? Does it mean that you're not respected? What does it mean? And I think if we can get to the meaning of his thoughts behind the situation, it will give us a lot of insight into why he behaved that way. His behavior was really explosive. It was really reactionary and almost on some level unhinged. And so I think in this situation, inability, her perceived inability to do what he was asking of her, created way too much uncertainty for him. I think he had this idea in his mind of how it was going to go before they even walked into that gym. I think in his mind, he was like, I have these drills planned out. We're going to run them. She's going to shoot them. She's going to listen to me. It's going to go flawlessly. She's going to improve. And then she's going to help her team win. And it didn't go that way at all. So I think he went in there with this um, certain level of certainty. He went in there with this perception that it was going to go a particular way, and it didn't go that way. And I think that felt maybe a bit too chaotic for him. He didn't feel like he had enough control over the situation. And sometimes when we have too much uncertainty, another word for that is variety. When we have too much variety, it feels like we're out of control and it feels overwhelming. So we'll do whatever we can to sort of bring that control back to us. And I think that's where the reactive behavior came into play, because he was saying to himself, okay, she's not listening to me. So if I just yell, if I talk louder, I get in her face, she's going to snap out of it and she's going to do what I say. And then it will go back to the way that I perceived it to be. It's going to go back to the way that I expected it to be. And it didn't. It just kept unraveling and spiraling farther out of control as the time went on. So I think maybe the other thing that he was feeling in that moment is he didn't feel significant. Like he didn't feel like he mattered because maybe he thought she wasn't hearing him, or she just was flat out not listening. And perhaps he's had this feeling before of not being heard and not being listened to, maybe in his marriage. But probably, if I had to guess, I would say it was in childhood. And so this happened probably frequently, where he, expressed himself, or maybe he got hurt and there was no one there to console him or listen to him about what he injured, or whatever the case may be. So I feel like that this has happened before, where he felt like he wasn't being listened to, and this in his mind felt like that. But this situation was not that situation. And so that's one thing that he maybe couldn't see, was that this isn't that. So while it's happened before in the past that he hasn't been heard, he hasn't been listened to, this isn't the same case, because I was watching and she was listening. She really was trying to do what he was telling her to do. So there was one instance where he had her go half court and he was screaming, "Hustle," and she came running up. He passed the ball to her, she grabbed it, and she just launched it and shot it at the basket. But he screamed at her, "Why would you do that? You didn't set up for the shot, you just threw it up there." So they ran it again. And so I watched, and she really did do a better job the second time of setting up for the shot before taking it, but she just didn't have enough power behind the ball. So she missed again. And you could tell that he was still incredibly frustrated with her, because in his mind, he told her what to do to fix it. So it should be automatically a basket that, connects and goes through the net. And it wasn't. And so it was still very frustrating for him. And so there probably have been other times where maybe he felt like he lacked control, like he was lacking in this situation. And so whenever we feel like we lack control, it again creates that uncertainty. And that feels unsettling, unchaotic. It doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel comfortable. And we want that safety. We want that comfort. That's wired into our brains. All the way back from, caveman times, because then we really had things to be afraid of. We had saber-toothed tigers chasing us, or other big fanged creatures chasing us, that we were worried about being their prey, their dinner. So we had to have some sort of control. We had to have some sort of awareness around us to keep ourselves safe. And that's where the certainty and the stability and the comfort comes in. And so perhaps there was a little bit of that too, where this sort of felt like he was unsafe, even though there was nothing unsafe about the situation, but subconsciously things just felt too out of control for him, and he didn't like that. And so he really was unable to cope with this situation that was going on. And so in that moment, he just couldn't regulate all the things that he was feeling. And yes, on some level, I am making assumptions, but from my coaching brain, I was watching the situation play out, and I was analyzing it and really piecing together the puzzle pieces of what was going on here. And so without his ability to regulate, he continued to react rather than respond. He continued to have this explosive behavior rather than having a more leveled approach, a more reasonable approach to handling the situation when she wasn't doing what she had been asked to do, or she was struggling. And I think, if more than anything, it wasn't even that she wasn't doing what she was being asked to do. She was having a difficult time achieving what was asked, because I don't think that the skill set was there for her. I think his expectations for her were unrealistic, and I think that contributed to his feeling of uncertainty and lacking control. I think if he had set maybe some standards, rather than having expectations, it might have gone differently, and he probably wouldn't have left feeling angry and pissed off and exhausted. And so if he had gotten to a place where he could have regulated himself, whether it was just taking some deep breaths, grabbing a drink of water, taking a lap around the basketball court, if he had gotten to a place where he would have been able to respond, he would have been able to provide her some constructive feedback, better feedback than what he was giving her in that moment, feedback that would have been supportive. He would have been able to see what she had done well. Even if there really wasn't anything, he would have been able to find something that she did better than other things, and would have been able to share that with her. So it just didn't feel like he was bashing her to pieces every single time she touched the basketball or made a move. And so when someone is in this triggered state where they're just shaming the shit out of you, if it's in the moment, it probably doesn't feel doable to be able to take a step back and assess the situation. And it might have to be after the fact. But just remember that if someone is in that shame spiral, it's more about the way that they're feeling in regards to the situation. There's something there that's triggering them, and you just happen to be caught in the crossfire. So if that helps you to be able to move through the situation without taking things so personally, I really hope that gives you some insight and the clarity to be able to see the situation for what it is. So thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you on the next video.